And we're joined on the phone today by comedian Beth Stelling. She's going to be having a pair of shows actually, coming up here March 7th at the Varsity Theater in Minneapolis. Hey, Beth, how you doing today?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I wanted to ask you first, I know you started your career here in the Midwest. Can you tell the listeners a bit about, how you got into comedy?
Sure. I had moved to Chicago after I went to college at Miami of Ohio, and I was very set on being a theater actress. And I had, before I graduated, interned at the Steppenwolf Theater, at the school at Steppenwolf. And then I kind of got to Chicago, and I did one play, The Good Person of Szechuan by Bertolt Brecht. And I think I probably got paid $30 for 2 months of work. And then I started auditioning for other shows, and it became very clear that I was feeling like a jaded 22-year-old theater artist. And I thought, if I don't want to do these plays now, with potentially companies that with people you don't know and you don't get to choose the programming. And that's kind of what spurred me into writing stand-up, because I can write about whatever I want and it's not reliant on a group of people. And so I think coming from theater, I just was yearning to sort of not have to answer to anybody. And I think maybe just coming from whatever it is, 16 years of school, I think I just wanted to not have to answer to anybody, be my own little boss, even if we were making, $10 a week and drink tickets. I was in charge, So that's how I moved to Chicago after I graduated from Miami of Ohio and started stand-up there, and I was there for 4 years before I took the leap elsewhere to Los Angeles.
Awesome. Well, was comedy always something you were into growing up? I mean, did you have influences or favorite comedians that kind of maybe set that ball rolling?
My idols were people like Whoopi Goldberg, Jim Carrey, Robin Williams. They were all people I saw in my favorite movies being funny. So I definitely got my first laughs by imitating them. And Mike Myers. I just really loved movies and funny movies. So that's how I got my initial first laughs, was by imitating those people and those characters. And I guess because I was the youngest of the three girls, I was maybe just kind of a little bit more of a ham. I do a podcast with my mom called We Called Your Mom, where we call my friends who are artists and comedians, we call their mothers. And one of the through lines of the podcast is typically we find out that my friend or the comedian or the performer is the youngest of the siblings. And not always, but quite often. I think there's a theme there with that.
Well, Beth, I know there's always been stand-up comics, of course, but it kind of seems like now there's, more than ever who are out there touring and making a living. And I mean, is that exciting to see, the industry thriving, or is it maybe tough to have, so much competition out there when you're on the road?
Right. It is. I think we made a joke about it potentially in season 2 of Crashing, which is the show that I had written on, starring Pete Holmes, where he made some joke that was like, every comedian has a Netflix special. And it's starting to feel like that is true, and it's almost funny. It's odd. I think that it's a direct result of this culture we've created of instant gratification or instant entertainment whenever you want it on demand. And I do think there are still people taking their time and spending many, many hours crafting an hour of stand-up to put out. But I also think a lot of them are bending to the will of audience demand of a new hour every year. And some of them, typically, I've come across the UK comics who are more willing to sort of self-deprecate in the way where it's part of their culture often because of the Edinburgh Festival to put out a new hour a year. And to me, that's always so daunting. I've never looked at it like that. And they'll say, some of my UK comic friends will joke only 20 minutes of it is good. But I don't know how American comics feel. I don't know if they stand by their full hour as actually good, or if they're also willing to admit that they're putting out quantity over quality potentially.
Sure.
And I'm not even really, I don't mean to drag anyone or anything like that, but it is definitely part of our culture right now to put out a lot of material and quickly. And that's not what I do. And it's not who some of my favorite comics. It's not what they do. I've had the pleasure and honor of touring with Sarah Silverman and becoming friends with her. And I love what she does. She doesn't rush to put specials out. She waits until she's crafted something that she believes in and it's good. And so I sort of take a page out of her book and learn from her in that way. And other comics are willing to do that too. I understand why people want to put out an hour a year or just say yes to things before they're ready, because we're all trying to survive. But I think I look at it less as a competitive thing and more of the people who need you will find you and appreciate it, and they can wait.
Well, I think on the other hand, you mentioned the landscape. A lot of comics kind of think maybe it's tougher, being a comic now with, political correctness and all that the way it is. How do you feel about that? Obviously, Sarah Silverman not one to shy away from things like that. So, I mean, does that make it tougher for you? Or?
Yeah. I've talked about this, and of course I've seen interviews and heard interviews. Like, I think the popular one that got picked up and carried away was Jerry Seinfeld saying he won't do colleges anymore. And but there's also younger comics who've had tumultuous experiences at colleges. I think Pete Davidson was one of them too. I followed him on a couple weeks later after he was at University of Central Florida. I was with some of the other SNL guys. We did their homecoming, and they were still kind of buzzing about it. And so I understand in many ways comics' aversion to it, but it's hit or miss. Not all colleges are the same. So I can pinpoint all the times I had an incredible experience at a college show where the kids were on board. It's tough to say kids because I was 18 once and I was like, I'm an adult. But, the college kids, sometimes they are very on board and sharp and with it and ready to laugh and willing to go there. And they I would describe it as know themselves better. Universities that come to mind for that would be University of Arkansas. I had a great time. William and Mary. I'm trying to think of other colleges that stand out. I wouldn't mention the ones that do, but there are some times when you're at a college and you're a 30-something comedian and you're talking to 18-year-olds, because typically the freshmen are the ones that come to these programmed events because the seniors are off living their lives and doing their own thing, or potentially too cool to attend. But some of them don't know themselves, so you might see them in the crowd. Instead of laughing loudly because they're confident in who they are, they're looking to the left and to the right and thinking, should I laugh?
Sure.
Because they don't really want to stand out at this point in their life. Now, that's just something I've observed. And it doesn't feel good as a comic to have a crowd go, oh, that's like our least favorite reaction. So that's why comics are so vocal about their aversion, I think, for colleges at this time, or people's politically correctness. Like, come on, get with it. Because, they want to laugh. They don't want an oh or a ooh, So that's why I think they're vocal. But, I had someone come up to me after my Portland shows and ask if I change my act when I'm in the Midwest, which to me leads me to believe that they think that my act is fairly,
risque, maybe?
I don't know. It pushes buttons. A little risque, or it pushes buttons. And, I don't shy away from topics that I feel like are relevant to the time. But I'm also not a comic that shocks for shock's sake. I'm talking about things that I care about. And it's really testing people's ability to listen and understand a premise or where I'm taking them, instead of shutting down when hearing a particular word. You expect a lot out of an audience, and I think that I am grateful to have, over the years, built an audience that comes ready to listen and receive, and I'm thankful for that.
Definitely. Again, comedian Beth Stelling is with us here, and you've got a couple shows coming up March 7th at the Varsity Theater here in Minneapolis.
That's right. At 7 and 9:30, I'm filming my first hour stand-up special at Varsity Theater this Saturday. And I'm really excited. I haven't been back to Minneapolis in a couple years since I did the 10,000 Laughs Festival. And so it's overdue to come to the city, and it's just widely accepted among comics as a great city to do stand-up in. So I really couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like Minneapolis kind of becoming a hotbed, for stand-up as of late. A lot of people, kind of performing here that maybe we didn't see, 10, 20 years ago.
Exactly. I think you guys have built up a nice reputation of coming to have a good time and hopping on the ride for an hour.
Well, Beth, I know you're doing a lot of writing and acting, in addition to the stand-up. It seems like a lot of people always come back to, stand-up, even if they become successful actors or whatever. Something about it, I guess, pulls them back on stage.
Yeah. It might be what I was discussing at the beginning of the interview, which is I don't need anybody to do it, except for myself. You don't have to rely on anybody else. You write it. You're responsible for it. I mean, of course, there are exceptions to the rule. People have writers. Some people do. And some people have directors or have other comics they've employed for advice. And I credit a lot of people I've worked with over the years as I've built this hour. People I've opened for, who I've run bits by, and they've helped me form this hour into what it is. So after doing comedy now for 13 years, I'm very different than when I first started, style-wise, and then just my outlook on it. I used to feel like it was very solitary, and just what I've learned over the years is it's so fun to include other comics and, riff with them and bounce ideas off each other. It only makes you a better comic. And so, yeah, I'm thankful for anybody that's opened for me over the last 3 years, or I've run bits by and they've listened, It's always better with more eyes on it.
Definitely. You mentioned, recording the first show here coming up on March 7th. Are you going to be using that for, maybe a special or another comedy album or something down the road?
Yeah. Yes, it will. It is going out. So Conan O'Brien and Team Coco are producing it, and for HBO Max, which is the new streaming service from HBO.
Okay.
So that will come out in May.
Awesome. Well, definitely.
May launch.
Yeah, that's a cool opportunity for the fans, to be part of that. And again, that's coming up Varsity Theater here on March 7th. Is there anything else coming up for you, Beth, or other, upcoming projects we should be looking out for?
Yeah, and I just want to say you can get tickets at teamcoco.com/live. And I really need people at the 9:30 show because the 7 looks great, but if you're listening, come to the late show. But the other stuff I'm working on, I'm always writing. I had the pleasure of writing on season 3 of the Last O.G. starring Tracy Morgan and Tiffany Haddish. So that'll be coming out on TBS. I got to work for Keenan Ivory Wayans, who is the showrunner.
Wow.
And he's a living legend. So it was awesome to get to work for him and learn from him. And other than that, I'm trying to think of anything. I like to do punch up on stuff. So, but I don't really, that's more of a, that's not really what you get credit for. And yeah, I'm working on developing a show of my own, and those things are always sort of, you got to take it one step at a time.
Awesome. Again, Beth, I'm looking forward to the show here coming up at the Varsity. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And again, that was comedian Beth Stelling, and you can catch her at the Varsity Theater in Minneapolis, a pair of shows coming up on Saturday, March 7th.